Come on now, Edward. Let's try and have a little dignity. You've already sung. Let's not have tears as well. I've got 4 guys serving 3 to 5 at Her Majesty's pleasure. You're a diamond, John. Today on the Comic Book Report, Mugshots from Mad Cave Studios. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm excited to say once again I am back in the world of Mad Cave Studios looking at a comic collection that I thought was gripping right from the cover. And honestly I was not disappointed. In many ways, Mugshots feels like a character-driven crime story from a bygone era, and I can't wait to talk about it today. Before we dive in though, I just would like to say a special thank you to those at Mad Cave for sending over this review copy in exchange for an honest review. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into today's comic collection. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Jordan Thomas, with art by Chris Matthews. The issues in this collection were published by Mad Cave Studios beginning in 2024. As far as what this edition includes, this volume collects Mugshots issues 1 through 4. And finally, this is a standard size trade paperback collection with nice glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 152 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first dedicated look at the front cover for Mugshots, and right from the top, I have to say I fell in love with this cover. In fact, this was a huge contributing factor as to why I wanted to check it out. I don't know what it was, if it was the imagery of the firearm, or him trying to hold on to this woman, or the minimalist color palette or design style with the black, white, and blue, but yeah, I just loved it. In fact, this book really only uses black, white, blue, and orange as its colors, and honestly, it's so striking and really works for me overall. As we get to the spine design, as you see here, it's predominantly a field of white. We have some blues and blacks, of course. We have the publisher, a little picture image window, the title, the creators, things like that. Overall, a pretty straightforward spine design, but I personally was a fan of this as well. I do think it looks very vivid and nice on a bookcase. On the back of today's trade paperback, we have some nice blurbs, accolades, along with some descriptions about the book, pricing information, publisher, things like that. You do see a bit of the orange I was speaking to as well. I think the back cover does a great job of selling you on the visual style and aesthetic of this book, both the actual character models as well as the entire color palette used in this trade paperback. Overall, I think this collection's exterior was designed quite well. Okay, now for all you prospective collectors out there, I did want to provide a brief look at this book's binding. As with the other Mad Cave paperbacks, I will say it is a standard glued binding. I had minimal gutter loss, and my collections opened quite well. A standard paperback binding in my mind, but one I thought was pretty effective. No complaints from me, but again, just wanted to give everyone out there a look. And of course, you can continue to look for yourself as I flip through the collection momentarily. Okay, let's go ahead and start diving into today's collection. As we open our book, we do have a title page, kind of publication information page, creator breakdown page, but we also have an introductory essay from one of the creators, which I really liked. It set the tone for the work, absolutely, give a bit of a context for it from the creator's life. Not that this was a true story, mind you, but it was nice to have a bit of context, and I think it can absolutely be read before enjoying the collection as kind of an introduction. After that, we do have the cover, and then we go right into chapter 1 of this work. So as I mentioned, this is a 4-issue book here. I do think that the issues are a bit longer than the 20-ish pages that you can see in some other comic book releases. So the issues or chapters in this work are a bit extra long, kind of padding it out a bit. But yeah, I like it. We cover a lot of ground in these 4 issues, and if you're wondering, this is a complete story arc. There was not a volume 1 for this Mugshots, though by the end, I do suspect they could re-enter this world at a different point, should the creators decide to continue on in some fashion. But what we have in Mugshots is basically a story of a young woman who appears to be kidnapped, and one family's kind of quest to get her back. Essentially, how Mugshots begins is this young woman who ends up being the niece of our primary main character. She's basically getting ready to go out for a night on the town. Her overprotective parents are a bit worried about her, and she just kind of slips away into the night. She does get abducted by someone in a car, though, and before too long, we have an argument between the mother and father, kind of trying to discourage one party from calling their brother, who might be affiliated with some organized crimes and kind of shady dealings. But of course, the mother still decides to call the brother and says, "Hey, this is what happened. Can you help us find her?" And he is out of the area. In fact, he's been warned not to return to this kind of local city because of maybe past dealings here. But in comes our other character. We're introduced to him because he kind of helps turn in a guy who basically snitched on a bigger crime boss. So we get to see that he is not opposed to basically, doing some dirty work. And he's still somehow charismatic and likable, but you can see that he's not the most squeaky clean primary character. Anyway, after the protestations of the father, we do have his brother-in-law showing up to find his missing niece. He feels partially responsible, not knowing if his own dealings in the city is what helped contribute to his niece's kidnapping, but he's really just bent to try to find her, try to get her away from whoever might have kidnapped her by any means necessary. Before too long, we find out that she was actually dating at one point recently this local crime boss's son, and these families have often not mixed historically, so right away we have kind of a lead suspect in this boyfriend or possibly ex-boyfriend figure. We have our main character kind of going through the ranks, getting intel, kind of meeting up with older contacts or friends or ex-paramours to try to find, again, more details on kind of the lay of the land, who are the main players still in this region, who are the kind of criminals or crime bosses, what's going on kind of politically in that landscape, and basically we slowly across these 4 issues have him trying to find his granddaughter. There's kind of a word that she might be pregnant, and that might further implicate this family. On the kind of organized gangster side of this, we have the main crime family in question kind of battling in a upcoming turf war with these new players from out of the country who want to basically buy into a criminal trade, kind of get some property in this area to help do some human trafficking. And right away, you're kind of, as a reader, assuming that this young niece is maybe also somehow caught up in human trafficking or some kind of scandal. But anyway, the kind of crime powers here that be in the city are right at the edge of kind of a war or kind of showdown, shootout. And when we have our primary character in here to kind of imbalance everything and kind of muddy the waters, things are ripe for some pretty intense action. As the story begins to resolve, we ultimately have this uncle find the niece, and we find out that basically she was involved with the main crime boss, which was actually her ex-boyfriend's father, who is, I guess, the father of her unborn child. We find out that he actually lost a young daughter at one point, and he was kind of shattered by this event. In fact, his wife is kind of a shell of her former self, and they've kind of held her in this facility to keep an eye on her, to keep her protected, but she is a bit of a prisoner. So that's really where things come to a head in the final act of this. We have our main character, the uncle, trying to get her out of this crime boss's headquarters. We have kind of a final skirmish or altercation before they're able to get her out. And then after that, we basically have his goodbyes to this town. He's kind of making his way out before things get too hairy for him again. And then we have kind of some other law enforcement officials basically suspecting that things were happening. And again, there's enough open at the end of this where if they want to do further adventures with this character, they certainly can. But this was a kind of conclusive story in and of itself. Along the way, we have him kind of coming entangled with local law enforcement as well. They hold him for a period. They're aware of his past dealings. We're not sure how many of the law enforcement may or may not be corrupt or in the hands of these gangsters as well. So a lot of kind of cool social political crime intrigue going on in this work as well. But that is the overall kind of shape and synopsis of this work. I think for fans of crime, fiction, noir, especially those that deal more heavily on the character-driven side, you'll definitely like Mugshots. I think that you have a really good chance of enjoying it, as I did. Looking at the art direction, I think that this is one of the most striking pieces of this whole work. The art style is immediately recognizable and intriguing to me. I love the color palette, limiting it to black, white, blue, and orange. I think they're able to get so much emotion and so much range just from that limited palette, and I just think it really works. We had a lot of instances of 9-panel layout as well, which I enjoyed seeing. The way that this artist conveyed motion I thought was super fascinating. I thought every image looked like a piece of art on its own. I love this style. It's kind of minimalistic in many ways. The character models have a kind of cartoonist sort of look to it, and I mean that in a very complimentary fashion. There's something rounded and over heavy art line that feels very pop and modern that I really loved. I think that this is a very modernist dream as far as the art direction goes. I really thought it was savvy, interesting, unlike a lot of what I have on my bookcase, and honestly something I'd recommend for the art alone, and the fact that we have a great story in it as well. This was a really great work. I also wonder what this feels like upon reread. I think that this is something I would definitely like to revisit again in a couple years, given the time. I think that it's interesting to see how they fluctuate between the orange and the blue. I was not necessarily able to discern a pattern, other than when things got pretty shady, I noticed more instances of orange, but so maybe there's something there to the color theory as well, but I'd like to examine that more upon revisiting. For now, though, again, I just love their choices. I think creatively it was really evocative and interesting. I do think that this is more for mature readers in mind. There's one scene of perhaps partial nudity, but it's pretty tame on that front. There's no scenes of sexuality from memory. There are instances of violence, but nothing that I felt was too graphic, at least in my mind. Again, the art style is very kind of animated looking, but I think overall it is for more mature readers. I think some of the conflicts we get into and kind of the central plot line in general involving human trafficking and murder and things like that, obviously, reader discretion advised. I do think just about anyone outside of that, though, could pick this up. You don't need to know anything. Like I said, it's pretty standalone. This is the beginning of this series, perhaps the end of this series as well. I haven't heard word if there's going to be follow-on efforts, but like I said, this is a pretty self-contained little story and a really fun little crime noir. At the back of the collection, as you just saw, we had a bit of a variant cover art gallery, some character models, a few extras, and solicits for other collections, and that really is Mugshots from Mad Cave. And now the grade. For a stylish and fun crime noir with a really charismatic central character, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Mugshots from Mad Cave Studios a B. This was certainly an above average read for me, and one I really enjoyed. I love that kind of minimalistic, modern aesthetic we got in this collection. The limited color palette led to some really interesting visual scenarios. I thought the writing was really strong. The central characters were all dialed in. If you're a fan of kind of crime comics or this genre in general, this is one I would definitely point you to. Again, I had a ton of fun with this. This was even better than I had hoped it would be, and yeah, definitely one I would recommend. But let me know what you think of Mugshots. Have you read this work? Are you interested to do so now? Have you read other Mad Cave Studios titles? Let me know all of that in the comments section if you could. Thank you so much, as always, for watching this video, and a huge thank you to Mad Cave for sending over this review copy in exchange for this honest review. And until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave a like, that comment we just discussed, and maybe check out another video on your way out. Thanks everyone, and have a good one.